Welcome back to the 4A Baseball Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. You have heard the first four of our team profiles, projections, previews, predictions, baseball. And today we're bringing you two more, the Atlanta Braves and Chicago Cubs. I know that's a bit of a janky duo right there, but the Braves kind of just fit best with the Cubs, and that's where we're at today. I'm really excited to talk about the Braves, and the Cubs are a really interesting team. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk about these. I feel like we might butt heads a little bit on this sensitive topic of the Cubs and maybe even the Braves, but I'm ready. Steves, how are you doing?
I'm excited to talk about both these teams. I think there's a lot of improvement the Cubs made in the offseason. I don't know if it's enough to propel them into the NL Central title, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, so we're going to kick it off today with the Atlanta Braves capping off the National League East. Obviously, last year, the Braves had one of the best stretches in baseball. There was a certain time in the season where they were on pace to win 114 games after a bit of a slow start. This is what allowed them to take over the National League East and go 101 and 61. Unfortunately, they kind of flamed out in the postseason, kind of riding the back of their rookie breakout, Spencer Strider, who was injured at the end of the season and could not throw a effective strike against the Phillies. And there's also Kyle Wright breakout, and there's the real storyline of the Ronald Acuna Jr. injury.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
feel like this season's gonna be like the story of the comebacks. I feel like we're looking for a comeback from a couple different players in Albies and Acuna. I feel like they have some pretty heavy weight on them, although this team is very good without them, as we saw last season. But now with the loss of several players in the offseason, it's going to be very important that these players start producing.
yeah,
Well,
it's
you
definitely
mentioned
true. They did
Stas
they
is
did
out,
lose out
right?
on a bunch of people. Like Adam Duvall, Kenley Jansen, both of them went to the Red Sox. Luke Jackson, he heads the Giants. Darren O'Day decided to retire. Robbie Grossman, he went over to the Rangers. Dansby Swanson went to the Cubs, and they traded William Contreras to the Brewers. All those moves, like they lost like a lot of depth pieces, I would say. And then obviously they lost their star shortstop in Dansby, and they lost their um, kind of split time catcher in William Contreras. They ended up getting a catcher back in that 3-team trade. They got Sean Murphy from Oakland. They signed him to an extension, 6 years, $73 million. Then they go out, they get Nick Anderson, they get Lucas Litke from the New York Yankees, and then Joe Jimenez from the Tigers.
Honestly, I don't think the Braves lost anyone this offseason.
That
I would agree with that.
I
I would
would
just say
disagree.
it's depth.
I
I
think
would disagree.
the argument
Go ahead,
Swanson or
Brad.
not. It's Swanson or not. It's just how much you value
I,
him.
So for me, right, it's you're bringing up a rookie. Yes, you have what's their Ron Washington, that their infield coach.
Yeah.
yeah.
They have literally like the best infield coach in baseball. So obviously he's gonna help Vaughn Grissom develop a little quicker. And I think he's not gonna fill Dansby's shoes at this moment, but I definitely think he has the potential to at some point in his career.
And I think not signing Dansby Swanson allowed them to be able to extend this offer to Sean Murphy.
Yeah.
And honestly, if I had to make the choice right now, I'd choose Sean Murphy 10 out of 10 times. Their bats are kind of like you can replace one with the other, and it's just what you value more as a defensive shortstop or a defensive catcher. And Sean Murphy's defense is among the best in the league, and
Yeah.
it's difficult to find a catcher nowadays that who can do that and hit.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm stacking this team up against the Mets, who is really the only team that's really threatening that spot, maybe the Phillies, but if I'm stacking up against the Mets, there's a lot of people that you're relying on here to come back. I mean, I'm talking about Ronald Acuna and Ozzy Albies, obviously, and then the bottom three in this lineup are not very good. And I mean, you can't understate how much of an impact William Contreras had before he got traded, obviously. He was a pretty big piece. I mean, I know Sean Murphy coming in is way better than William Contreras, but that's not a very significant difference. I think you're losing a better bat and potentially William Contreras. Dansby Swanson, obviously losing him is bad, but obviously I think signing him to a long-term deal would have been pretty bad for the club. And then you lost some bullpen pieces, obviously, and I think that's going to be the biggest downfall for them. I think they have one of the better bullpens in baseball this season, but I think with losing Luke Jackson and Kenley Jansen, and Darren O'Day, who wasn't as big of a piece, but losing those guys for your bullpen is just not very good, and I don't know how that's going to hold up this season.
I mean,
I
and then they
think they
went
did a
out and they
fairly good
got
job.
Nick Anderson, Lucas Licky, and Joe Jimenez. I'm not saying like those are like swappable, but like I mean, they did add pieces back, so it's not like the end of the world.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, you're kind of hoping that Nick Anderson returns to form. I like Nick Anderson, but he's just been battling injuries since his dominant run in 2020.
yeah, I think I do agree. The bottom of that lineup is probably like their biggest hole. 7, 8, 9. It's right now Marcelo Zuna, Eddie Rosario, and Vaughn Grissom. I could easily see Darno taking over that DH spot on the days he's not catching. I think that
think I
honestly
Yeah, I
be
was
a
think
better
he
I was gonna
move.
will.
say.
They've got utility players on their bench, which is kind of good. You just have anyone that could fill in anywhere on any given day, and I think that has its benefits. Um, what was I gonna say? The lineup, the top 6 is among the best in the league. It's probably top 5 right there with the Astros. Like the Astros are probably a little bit above that top 5 or top 6, excuse me. But there's very few teams that are better than Acuna leading off, Olsen second, Riley third, Murphy fourth, Michael Harris 2 hitting 5th, and Ozzy Albies hitting 6th. Like that's pretty good right there.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, for sure.
that's definitely good, especially if Acuna and Albies are back to form and injuries and stuff like that.
I agree. I think Acuna got rushed back, and you clearly saw that. He still stole a ton of bases last year. It's just it didn't really feel like the bat was there, and I think being able to have spring training, being able to get the winter reps he got in is going to really benefit his transition back, and I think he'll be perfectly fine this year. There's reasonably 3 or 4 people that could have a 40-40 season, or if not
In
30,
this
30.
lineup,
Yeah.
in this lineup,
Well,
or
this is
just
it's
in the
at
Braves,
least
or
3. Yes. Acuna,
Name
Harris,
the three.
Albies.
yeah, I mean, 40-40 is like impossible, but I think 30-30 is
Like
definitely possible
definitely
for guys
30,
like
30. Yeah.
yeah.
And it depends on what type of player Vaughn Grissom is. If he's the type of player we saw kind of when he broke out last year, then like there's an opportunity there, but I don't think he's that player. As not yet at least.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So let's hit in. We've kind of like touched on their lineup a little bit. So let's talk about their rotation. They got Max Fried, Spencer Strider, Kyle Wright, Charlie Morton, and Mike Soroka, and then Ian Anderson. Depending on injuries and stuff like that, he'll probably fill in. What do you guys see from this starting rotation? I definitely think it's a deep rotation if everyone performs on the level that on the higher end of their level.
I
Uh,
think the number 5 spot's really concerning.
Yeah, I think there's reasonable
That's
concern for that number 5 spot. It's I mean, Nick Anderson sorry, Ian Anderson has not looked very good. And then obviously Mike Soroka hasn't pitched in like years. So that number 5 spot's gonna be flipping between them, but both of them are not very good right now, and they're both big question marks. I mean, they could easily have a bounce back. They're both very young still, but as of right now, these two guys are not good enough to be a 5 starter.
Yeah, we saw in spring training yesterday. They had a kid named Bryce Elder who looked really, really good. He allowed 1 hit over 3 innings. That's a guy who could definitely compete for that 5 spot. I can see that. I think having Fried, Strider, Wright, or at least I'm gonna retract that. Fried, Wright, Morton. It's reliability right there. Strider, there's volatility in terms of injury. When he's on the field, you know he's going to strike a ton of dudes out. If he's what he was last year, then this rotation, top 5 in baseball. At least a top, like the 1, 2, 3 of Fried, Strider, Wright is a top 5 in baseball. Max Fried's
Brett,
obviously
did,
like
did Strider end up having more than one injury last year, or was it just that one injury that concerns you? Because like you keep talking about like a this longevity injury problem with him, but he seems to only have had one injury, and he managed to pitch like 160 innings last year.
he threw 130 innings last year.
130.
And
Oh man.
yeah, but if it's the think about it, if you have like a key component of a pitcher that gets injured and doesn't
Yeah.
require surgery, like Tommy John, yeah, like they're going to be out for a while. But given the updated surgery where they're using like almost like a Kevlar type tape to repair the UCL, like there's some reliability in the fact that you can come back from Tommy John surgery and be effective. Spencer Strider injured his oblique, and we've seen with Max Scherzer, it acts up repeatedly. Tyler Glasnow, it acts up repeatedly. And he may be young, but he's like a very violent motion. He's got like gigantic quadriceps, but he's not the tallest person. So you don't know how that bodes for his body.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that makes sense, putting him at the question mark position. I think the other three guys, I mean, the guys in this rotation can fill in the gap for him, but I think he will be that difference maker.
I agree. I think Charlie Morton's going to rebound like back to form a little bit. I don't think he's an like a Cy Young candidate anymore, or that 3 year stretch where he was. But honestly, you're looking like a middle of the rotation guy that's going to give you 200 innings and 200 strikeouts. That's what Charlie Morton is nowadays, and there's a ton of value in that. Again, the biggest question mark in that rotation is Strider and the 5 spot. Because we don't know what Mike Soroka is. He's thrown 1 inning since 2020, and if that inning was in 2020, he didn't look good in the minor leagues last year, and he's injured once again. So
Yeah, man, I'm just going back on what you said about Bryce Elder, I think he could very well be ending up in that 5 position. I don't know how deep he goes into games, but if you can get a good 4 innings out of him every game he pitches, it's pretty valuable.
I agree. And then Stavs, what's that bullpen looking like?
That bullpen, it's honestly a deep bullpen. They got Raisel Iglesias, Kirby Yates, AJ Minter, Joe Jimenez, Colin McHugh, Lucas Licky, Dylan Lee, and Jackson Stevens.
I think we forget how good Raisel Iglesias is.
Is
In all
he
honesty.
their projected closer? Or is it who's their
I don't
projected
know.
closer?
I don't know,
Because
but
like
the way,
looking at these names, it doesn't look like there's a set closer. It'd
which is
probably be
fine though.
Iglesias or
You
Yates,
don't
I
need a
would
set
say.
closer. Like if your
Yeah, but
best bullpen arm can be deployed in the biggest situation, then that's what you should do. Like if Raisel Iglesias is the guy, and you're in, second and third, 1 out in the 7th inning, throw in Raisel Iglesias. At least
Yeah,
that's my philosophy on it. I think there's arms that could take over on any given day. Like Kirby Yates, we haven't really got to see much of his stuff since 2019 when he was dominant with the Padres. But there's opportunity there. AJ Minter could easily fill in or be that leverage guy. Big lefty arm. You saw what we could do in the 2021 postseason. Joe Jimenez, Colin McHugh, all proven arms that at any given time could come in and be incredibly effective. So I don't think this team needs to have a set closer.
yeah. I mean, there's more depth than stardom in this bullpen, and that's fine. I think it's gonna work for them. I don't think it's gonna be the best bullpen in baseball, but I think it's definitely gonna work. And I feel like they definitely did a good job at patching the hole left by Kenley Jansen, Luke Jackson, and Darren O'Day. Now leaving the team. I think it's gonna be a good bullpen. I don't think it compares to the Mets bullpen. But it's a good bullpen.
I mean,
I think it's a very well-rounded bullpen.
that's
I
what
think
I'd
it's
rather
a
have a
good
bunch of
top to bottom.
I'd rather have a bunch of gold cards than a couple of diamonds and silvers.
I don't
Honestly,
know. I don't know. I disagree with that, but
unless it's like a
it
the 79 Battle Royale TJ Antone card.
yeah. I mean, if you can pick and choose, man. I don't know.
The
Yeah.
knuckleballers.
Oh God, dude. Anyways,
So let's get into actually talking about the lineup. This is kind of their projected. They got Acuna out in right, Matt Olson at first, Austin Riley in third, Sean Murphy behind the dish, Michael Harris in center, Ozzy Albies at second. So that's their top 6. That's kind of when we were talking about that's like one of the best top 6 in baseball. After that, it kind of drops off. They got Marcelo Ozuna probably at DH. Again, like Brad said, we expect kind of Travis d'Arnaud to take over that spot because Ozuna's not that good anymore. And then Eddie Rosario on left, Vaughn Grissom at shortstop.
yeah, I think this is a really good lineup. It just needs to. We need to see the depth. The lineup has to go
Definitely.
around. It needs to be the first inning and a half. It can't just be that happens and then the second and third inning are just busts because
Yeah,
7, 8, 9 doesn't do anything.
exactly. Their bench outside of Travis d'Arnaud has Orlando Arcia, Sam Hilliard, and Jordan Luplow.
Luplo.
Luplu, sorry. It's I mean, again, like we said, it's kind of just like a well-rounded lineup. They got defense, they got bats, they got I mean, pretty much everything you want at every position. I think again, you want kind of a better DH, but hopefully Travis d'Arnaud can take over for Marcelo Zuna, because he's getting up there in age. Vaughn Grissom's young, but he will definitely he'll definitely be good at some point in his career.
I agree, especially with the
Yeah.
Braves development.
It's kind of funny how this team in the Braves is competing with the Mets, who have probably spent what, like 200 million more
Yeah.
than the Braves. It's a very well built team, and this is a team that's built to compete for a while. So I think
I mean, they kind of have raised their guys and then spent all their money on their guys, opposed to the Mets just going out and signing others in free agency.
yeah.
So it's kind of like, I mean, they're spending just as much, just like, well, not just as much, but like they're using their money to keep their homegrown talent, unlike the Nationals. Outside of that, prospects, they have no 50 future value prospects expected in 2023. It really doesn't mean anything. They're the Braves. They will definitely be good enough. They have one guy whose ETA is this year, and it's a left-handed pitcher, Jared Schuster.
Yeah.
He's 6'3", 210, lefty, 24. Again, we don't really know what to expect from him, or I don't really know what to expect from him. But I definitely think I definitely think the Braves will make him a very, very good left-handed pitcher.
I think obviously their prime candidate is not really a prospect anymore. Is Bryce Elder? He threw enough innings last year, like where he lost his rookie eligibility. But he's got 4 pitches with like well above average vertical movement, and when you have a sinker and cutter with really good carry, I think that's going to be really beneficial, especially when the defense behind you. We know 3/4 of it can be solid. We don't really know what Austin Riley's glove is. It's not very good. And then obviously the shift. So this Bryce Elder kind of looks like a batted ball in play type person. He only struck out 20% of batters he faced last year. But then again, rookie. So we're gonna see what he is this year.
Are you guys ready to get into predictions? Because I'm ready.
All
Yeah,
right,
let's
Tom,
do it. You
kick
start
us
us
off
off,
with
Tom.
your record.
All right. I probably have them the lowest here, at 94 and 68. Is that falling in the same range as you guys?
Nope.
I have him higher.
Hi. Okay. Yeah, I got my team MVP. This is a team that's like very, very level across the board. So they're all pretty good. But I think one guy that's going to stand out is Austin Riley, just as the best bat in that lineup. He is as Brad says, the thump bat in that lineup. So I think he'll be that difference maker. As for the most important player, it's got to be one of the players coming back from injury. But I think the absolute most important player from that injury is going to be Ronald Acuna Jr. and how he comes back this season. We got to see some more power. Slugging was down about 150 last season. Obviously, biggest down season. And for a regular player, that's not a down season. But for Ronald Acuna, who was on pace to win the MVP before his ACL injury, that's a down season. So we're looking for a comeback from him. Cy Young, I got Max Fried. I think he'll be that guy in the rotation. It could very well go to Spencer Strider, depending how his injury holds up, as Brad was talking about. You look at this lineup when you're talking about a breakout player, and you really don't know who to pick because everyone is already pretty established. There's only one guy that's not very established, and it's Vaughn Grissom. I mean, that's the only guy I feel like I can pick. There's no one else. I mean, you can say like, do re-breakouts count? Because I mean, I would say Ronald Acuna will re-break out, but he's already well established. I'm going to say Ronald Acuna is going to re-break out, just because there's no other really young players in this lineup because everyone's pretty established already.
I mean, last year I had Pujols for the Cardinals. Was my prediction
That's
for
valid
breakout.
though. It ended up working.
I
Yeah.
know. That's like one of my only ones that did.
I have them being a few clicks higher than Tom. I'm going 98 and 64, also second in the East. MVP, I went with Ronald Acuna Jr. I'm not as high on Austin Riley as Tom is. I don't dislike what he brings to the table, but again, like we talked about, I think also Ronald Acuna Jr. is the most important piece. So your most important piece, and he is your franchise guy. He's kind of the face of the franchise at this point. So he kind of needs to have that bounce back, most important VP type season. Cy Young, I went with Spencer Strider. I think he's gonna fight through that oblique injury at any cost. He's gonna do whatever he can to stay out on the field as much as possible. And breakout, I mean, again, we talked about, I guess, re-breaking out. And I was gonna go with Ozzy Albies because I think him, like we've talked about him along with Ronald Acuna Jr., the two most important pieces, kind of like to have those bounce back type seasons. And since we've already talked about Acuna a bunch, I think Ozzy Albies needs to have his breakout season, re-breakout season.
It's fair enough. I am the only one of us that has the Braves winning the division, which is really confusing considering their track record over the past couple of years. Um,
It's fair.
I have Austin Riley as their MVP. I drink Austin Riley Kool-Aid because he is the thump. He's one of the best bats in the league. He arguably is a top, I'd say top 4 offensive third baseman. Putting right in that category of Rafael Devers and Alex Bregman. And Alex Bregman's on. That's what our third baseman projections reflected. For Cy Young Award, I also went with Max Fried. I mean, he's going to be in the Cy Young conversation. It's given at this point. For breakout, I wanted to go with Bryce Elder because I don't think Soroka or Anderson will be healthy, and we've been talking about him all episode. So let's give him a little bit of Kool-Aid. And then most important, I had either Acuna or someone else. And since you guys have both taken Acuna, I will take Spencer Strider because if Spencer Strider does not return to form, this is really bad for the Braves. Did I say their record?
You didn't
No, you didn't.
say,
You
you
didn't say-
just
you
said they
you
were
said
gonna go
would win the
first.
East.
Okay. I have them at 101 and 61, same exact record as last year. I don't think this team gotten any worse or any better. And so that puts them at 101 and 61.
Here's the difference. So instead, can I talk?
Yeah,
This
I think
team
we're
did
gonna
not
say
get- This team did not get worse or any better, but the other teams in the division all got better.
They don't have
So-
to play their division as much.
I know, but it's not gonna. I'm telling you, it's not gonna balance out. And you also, like you mentioned, they lost a lot of guys. They got some guys back. I think they're slightly worse, if anything, than last year. And that slightly worse is still gonna be in that upper 90s range. I think 94 is cutting them pretty low, but the other teams in this division have just gotten so much better.
definitely agree with Tom. Tom is way too low, and I don't think you're way too high. I think you're about on track. But I think the big thing with them is that they, like we've said, they haven't gotten better, they haven't gotten worse, but it's just a matter of they were streaky last year. Kind of like they got hot at the right time and then they cooled off again at the worst time. But it's a matter of, are they going to be streaky or are they going to be more consistent? Because if they're streaky again, I don't know if that'll lead to the same type of result as a 101 and 62 record or 61 record.
I think having this core together for another season is going to be really beneficial to the Atlanta Braves. We've talked about how that everyone has signed to a ridiculously team-friendly contract and donated 1% of their earnings to the Atlanta Braves Foundation. This is going to be the second year around where they donate 1% of their earnings to the Atlanta Braves Foundation. It feels like that whole core is there, and it's got more solid. Like Albies, Olsen, Riley, Murphy, Harris, and Acuna are all locked up in the field. That's 2 positions of the starting 8 on the field that aren't locked up. I think that's pretty effective. And I think their ceiling, honestly, I will say their ceiling is not as high as the Mets. I think their ceiling is like a 103 win team, but their floor is about where Tom's record is, 92 to 94 wins.
I would say 92 to 94. I think Tom kind of lowballed the Braves, but that's kind of consistent with what he's been talking about the entire episode.
Yeah. Tom, do you agree with that floor?
Yeah, I feel like I put them at the floor. Like I put them at their lowest. And I think I did that because my predictions are going in this world where the Mets are the best team in the East and the Braves are the second best and the Phillies are the third. And I feel like you can't have a repeat of last year. Last year was very rare. You don't usually see 2 teams in one division going over 100 wins other than the Giants and Dodgers in 2021. I haven't seen that. We haven't seen that very often. So I don't see it happening again for a while. I think one team is going to run away with this season, and I think it's going to be the Mets. It could be the Braves though. These teams have high ceilings. Braves and Mets with a little bit higher ceiling, but I think the Mets. But it hasn't really happened other than those 2 instances. I think these teams are both powerhouses. The NL East is a powerhouse in itself, so it could go any way. And that's the thing. The Phillies, Braves, or the Mets could all win the division. It's going to be very close. I put the Braves at the floor because in my instance of my predictions, I have the Mets being the team that runs away with it.
That's fair enough. I think their volatility is like medium to low. Like,
Yeah,
I think we
I
know
definitely
this is
agree.
going to be a very good team. I think of the Phillies, Mets, and Braves, the Braves are the highest mean value, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah, that
it,
makes sense. Yeah.
like if things go wrong, I think they're still, at least in my eyes, they're still better than the Mets going wrong and the Phillies going wrong.
Yeah, and they definitely have a lot of experience, running the East. They've been doing it for a while, so it's gonna it's gonna be good for them. I think their absolute floor is 94 wins. I don't see it physically possible for them winning under 90 games.
Yeah. All right, Steves, any final thoughts on the Atlanta Braves?
Nah, I think we've covered everything top to bottom. I think it's time to get into the Chicago Cubs.